Hey guys, I'm Tyler Edlin. Welcome back. I'm going to have an awesome video on color and light today. That's a very popular subject that I get a lot of requests for, and I'm going to be answering a question I get all the time. What is the best color? What color do I choose? How do I go about deciding what color is best for my scene or picture? So I'm going to demonstrate an awesome exercise that you guys can repeat at your own pace or try with different subject matter. It works fairly universally. We're going to paint that. And it really is going to come down to, without getting too specific, of course, right now, is that it really about mood and the feeling that you want to evoke in your work. That always really helps make me personally choose the colors that I do. But I want to show you guys rather than talk about it. So let's begin. And this video is going to be sponsored by My Air Bridge. Details for that and everything else below. And let's go. Folks, like any good little mini comp that has some geometric forms in there, I want to get a little bit of perspective so it doesn't look like a scene that came right out of, Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse. So I'm going to start with a landscape line and a singular little butter stick of a cube. Now that looked too simple, so I'm going to come in here and add a few medium and smaller shapes as well as a nice little roof on top of that. I think that'll just make it just interesting enough that it's not totally boring, but it's a good place to start. And this was for a class demo last week, so I'm just trying to keep the momentum moving. I could literally spend an hour just tweaking those little castle shapes and of course making that perfect. But again, focus is the name of the game here and what that goal of the assignment is. And the goal here is to practice colored light to express different moods on a similar scene. It came from a student question, like, how do we portray different moods on this? And so that kind of starts, of course, with color psychology, right? If you could just type that into Google, it pops right up and it gives you basically generalized meanings and feelings for different color associations. And while that's all great and all, you could take some liberties with that. It's just a place to start. And I start this with like any type of job. Either a client is going to be telling me, hey, we need a day shot, we need a night shot, or maybe I'll send them a sheet like this that has a bunch of them and they'll just pick it. So you can literally decide the colors or the mood in your scene even by like just saying, okay, this is going to be this time of day, it's going to be this season or weather condition, right? That's 3 different options. If you have no idea how to start to color a scene, think of those 3 things. What's the time of day that you want to do? What is the season of the year? And what are the weather conditions? That alone will give you enough parameters. And you can mix and match. What if there's a thunderstorm in the winter? Or what if there is rain in the fall? Summer? What if it's a cloudy, overcast day, but it's the summer? Right? Like all these factors will contribute to the mood and the feeling of a piece. So when I'm assigning something like this to my patrons, and they have their own little kind of special version, I made them a whole castle cutout worksheet. You guys could check that out if you're a subscriber. But yeah, like you can add numerous different things. And then on top of all of that, I think the most important thing is, of course, what's a general feeling, that we want to get? Like, so in this first scene, it's like, I want to do something kind of little bright, end of the day, but it feels, it feels nice and romantic, like a nice, good sunset. So we're bringing in those purples. We'll add in hints of those pinks toward the end. We'll add nice, bright kind of yellows on the stone here. And when I'm approaching this in any scene, you guys could probably check out some of the last few videos. I did some similar stuff, like a Japanese fortress and a tree in the mountains. I like to paint with light through and through. So I'm doing a very minimalist approach on this. Like, okay, the roof is kind of like this color. It's going to be basic natural stone for the castle. And rock is really great, if you want to practice lighting and stuff like that. But now we're going to get into a word from our sponsor, My Air Bridge. They're super awesome for sending files on a professional level. I use it all the time. Now, for someone like me that is terrible with just services and technology as a whole, it's very simple to use, and they actually have a new app with settings that enable now even larger transfers and no restrictions to recipients whatsoever. There's simple global data sharing and teamwork. You can collaborate with others when it comes to receiving and sending things very easily. And of course, there is numerous amounts of emphasis on the protection of your personal data. It's perfect end-to-end encryption. It just simply works really great, and it's a nice professional alternative. Couldn't recommend it enough. Right, so we know we could choose colors simply by their color psychology, the weather, or simply the season. But the beauty of with all of this is that it's not so much we're taking a scientific approach to color design and choices, and there are instructors and courses out there that kind of approach it a little more tangibly like that. I honestly like to approach color more from an emotional response. Like if I'm thinking what feels spooky or what feels eerie, like in the case of this comp here, I'm going to lean in with those dark, moody blues and violets, and then start adding in additional kind of spotlights to highlight and vignette certain attributes of it. For me, the first thing I always go for is the silhouette of whatever kind of subject I'm trying to portray. Right, in this case, it's a singular little castle tower or a manor. And as soon as I can get that to pop, with very few brush strokes, the better. So this is what I mean by painting with light, right? Like I don't need details. I don't need necessarily texture of this stone or this grass. I'm simply trying to paint the mood of this shape as it exists in like its own little vacuum in this space. And what I like to do from there is ask myself, is there any direct light going on in this scene on top of the ambient light, right? Because when we're starting with the mood, we're painting this silhouette entirely from the ambient light side of it. Like no real kind of direct light. It's just light affected by its overall atmosphere. So like in this case, if I wanted to do like a moonlight, or if I wanted to do some kind of off-cam spotlight that's just kind of tossing a little light into some kind of portion of this, we could just basically at this stage ratchet that light up a bit and make it much more potent, or increase the intensity of that illumination in terms of light. Those are the more technical kind of 3D terms that you'd use if you were messing with this in Blender. Now, I like, after setting the natural lighting in the scene like I did here, I like to go in and eventually start to tinker with the idea of layering on top of that the man-made attributes of that. So like I started with that modest little lit window up there. We're going to come back, we're going to add a few more down the line, but I like to start with the natural ambient lighting first and then layer in the man-made effects. That, right? It's kind of like we're a byproduct of that, and the scene will be a byproduct of what we're doing to that atmosphere. So it's a systematic approach in regards to how I tackle the different light sources in a scene, but that's as technical as I get. I'm still like, okay, this is dark, it's brooding, it's blue, or like in this case I could use blue but change the context of it, because a lot of this is about context. Again, like I was telling my students, you could see a happy-go-lucky silly clown tripping over a banana and it's hilarious, but on the flip side of that, you could take a clown, you could rub some of that makeup off, you could knock a tooth out of him and then put him in dark underlit scene, and the clown is the scariest thing in the universe, right? It's context. Same tower, same clown, you change the parameters of that. So right, we change the color or the brightness of that blue from a dark blue to a bright blue and increase the saturation of it. Now all of a sudden we have a bright Ghibli-esque sort of sky. We leave the bottom open a little bit. We get some nice a nice atmospheric fade, because atmosphere is denser when we go down, and at that horizon. And now we have the hint of clouds, and we could chisel out some clouds, as I think we'll do later in the video, but we can imply so much with so little. This is fundamentally a less is more sort of exercise, because right, that is the goal here. We're practicing just mood, just brushwork, just color and light. We're not worried about architecture. We're not worried about details. Not even really worried about composition. It's just a great sort of approach you can apply to anything. You could take your apple, put it on a table, and paint it with 6 different lighting scenarios and see what that does for the apple. This is a very repeatable sort of exercise that you can get very specific mileage out of. But I recommend for of course, most beginners in a lot of cases like this to do the least amount of inventing as possible if you don't have any idea what color or what light will do. And what I mean by that is if you need to grab some additional photo reference of what bright, sunny lighting conditions look like, grab them. If you need to see what storm clouds look like to help convey your idea, grab them. If you need to know what the shadow side of grass looks like, get that reference, right? Nothing. You just, if that'll help you, understand the subject better, absolutely go grab it. For sure. All right. But yeah, like any of these scenes, I'm fundamentally about getting these shapes to read and these shapes of color to play off each other. So that's why I'm doing like longer shadows on that one. I'm doing it cooler toward the top of the castle, a little bit warmer on the bottom. I want to feel a little bit of that bounce light hitting that grass and hitting back up there. Now, I want to take a departure from that one. I'll circle back. I'll circle back to them all. I just want to basically block out the most of these color schemes. And this one, I haven't used yellow. I'm going to use yellow. For me, and for a lot of people, yellow in a psychology sort of way can mean a number of things. For me, it's a soft sort of passive look into mystery and the unknown. When I personally see yellow in this sort of context, that's what I could think of. You could make yellow is very flexible, right? It can be very happy, very sunny, very warm. But on the flip side, with a color like yellow here, I could make something feel a little more tired. I could portray a little bit more mystery. If you use enough blacks and the yellows with enough gray, you could probably get even harrowing out of that, for sure, no doubt. But yeah, I'm trying to feel out something a little more passive and a little bit more like, it's kind of nice, but something could happen, right? Like yellow on edge. Call that this kind of color scheme. But you can let me know if any of these, you strike any different kind of chords that you guys let me know in the comments. Of course, I always love hearing from you. But yeah, we're going to go with like a light source. It's kind of in the background, so I want to just blast out a little bit of that soft sort of bloom kind of wrapping its way around the edges. And I'm using the lasso tool to kind of control that. And then we'll add some more specifics to it, of course, later on. Like I want to definitely define a little bit of cloud shapes in there. I kind of sort that out. But yeah, I'm going to keep it mostly abstract for the time being. And we could, I think later down the line, we'll add some grass. They're just the yellow spheres right now, right? And then we'll add some trees and feel that out. Now that got a little yellow for me. It was going a little off brand. I feel it felt too sunny and warm and happy, like the summer air. So I neutralized it. I replaced those yellows with very neutral yellows. And that starts to add a little bit of gray to it, very passive kind of gray. And that will kind of make it a little more somber. A nice like, oh, what happened? Did somebody die in this place? That sort of thing. And the trees could help. So you can see I prematurely even added trees to that one above it, like those nice kind of pointy and sharp little, oh, what kind of spook fest is this? But in this one, I got like they're just fields of like, I don't know, because I didn't grab a reference, but it's going to neutralize as it's going toward that background, and we'll add some trees to the foreground. But if I add different types of trees and contextual surrounding elements to these, that could add to the feeling and mood we want to portray. So yeah, when I think about things, or when I'm thinking of a picture, it's always like, what do I want the experience like of both the viewer, and if I were in this picture, what do I want that to be like? And I literally just start tossing colors down with the biggest brush I can, and then I assess it, right? It's apply, assess, and then pivot based off that assessment. I just don't try to set it and forget it. We're not doing that approach, but I'm setting it and analyzing what a new color, if I introduce a new color into a scheme, how that is playing off and relates to the colors surrounding it. And of course, that means I'm going to gauge the value first of all. Is this light or dark? And then I'm going to look at how that temperature. I haven't really talked about temperature of color yet, but I'm going to look at if that color it needs to be warmer or cooler than the colors next to it. That's still a huge thing, and I have a lot of videos on color and temperature. I don't remember specifically, but I remember being like hundreds of videos in. I've got videos on temperature buried in there, so you could type Tyler Ridland temperature if you want. I could, maybe I'll have my assistant find the temperature videos that are on YouTube, and I could put a couple links below. If they're not there, don't hold it against me, please. But I might. So yeah, I'm going back up to the storm one, and I want to get a little bit of light breaking through those clouds. It adds a nice little rhythm, you know, to the scene. It breaks up that solid shape in the sky without being too busy, without being too fussy. And I kind of like that. I like blowing out the blue at the bottom around that horizon to help set a little bit of distance, and you know, it's like I have a fogger literally behind the structure, just fogging things up like they do on the set of a movie. I kind of like that effect, so I'm adding a little bit of that, a little bit of moonlight catching some of those surfaces. So it's easy. It's great too to work on multiple images like this at once, because then I can like get a fresh take when I come back to it. I'm gonna add a little bit of green down there, a little bit of that yellow, just to kind of offset some of those colors. And if there were any lights on the lower end, I could add that as well. You know, kind of works out nicely. But yeah, just getting using the standard grass brush to just break up some of those soft shapes down low, and yeah, that I'm not going for detail with that, but I don't want it to look like a soft sort of sphere. It's a nice little way to break up that space, and it adds a little. If I change the color of that grass brush, I can add a little bit of variety to it. Like, how do you paint grass? Well, you use a grass brush. But how do you make grass not suck? You use the grass brush really, really well. So that's the short end of it. But yeah, you gotta blend it. You gotta work it in. It doesn't hold up close at all. But like, since we're not going up close, and I mean we're not, this should work right absolutely fine for that. And I'm putting a, you know, you do want to focus on texture where direct light hits. So like, of course, in this circumstance, I am absolutely just putting a little bit of brick on the side that's lit more. Now, realistically, of course, that wouldn't have as big of a cast shadow, honestly, behind there. And if you look at something bright on a sunny day, like a high noon, there's enough light in the air, and that's gonna get probably a lot lighter. But you know, just to get nice bold graphic shapes, I'm amplifying that contrast up artistically. It's right, it's an artistic choice, but I did it intentionally, and ultimately that's the most important thing, is that if you're doing something with a shape or a form or applying a color to it, try to understand why you're doing that, and that will help you grow when doing these sort of focus-based assignments. If you're just arbitrarily copying a photo and you don't know why something's doing that, you're not even asking yourself why, then you're just copying and you're mindlessly grinding without literally applying logic and a thought process to it. And I see it every day, almost, students falling into that trap. So don't fall into it. Think logistically about things and try to ask yourself enough questions as to why something's doing this and what effect that has on the surrounding components. That's a great little way to approach a focus study, because anybody could put a picture down and you could start copying it, because all you're doing is focused on copying it, and that's going to hold you back if you do that day after day and you're not trying to think your way through it. So of course, like learning anything, you could do a study of it, hide the reference, and try to apply what you learned in that study either to your own picture or to try to recreate the study without the reference and see how you do. It's, again, that's a bonus sort of exercise. You just throw it out there, you guys could try in addition to something like this. But thank you guys for watching. Definitely appreciate all the feedback and the comments you leave, and I want you guys to take care, keep on practicing. And again, there's links below for everything. This video was sponsored by My Air Bridge.